That was the opening of Clara Schumann's Romance, Opus 11, number 1, and it was performed by Lucy Parham. I'm Erica Worth, and welcome to this Pianist podcast. Today I am speaking with Lucy about her diverse life in music, with a particular emphasis on her Composer Portrait series, which celebrates its 25th anniversary. Lucy, it's lovely to have you on the Pianist podcast today.
Lovely to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. I thought I'd kick off by discussing a rather landmark achievement in your Composer Portrait series, this being its 25th anniversary. So why don't you explain to the listeners what they can expect at a Composer Portrait concert?
Well, first of all, I mean, the thought that it's 25 years is quite extraordinary, makes me feel very old, which of course I am. As with many things in life, these composer portraits came out of something of a much, almost like a smaller kernel of an idea. And I used to chat a lot in my recitals. I've always been very fond of the music of Robert and Clara Schumann. So I'd be chatting to the audience, and often I'd read one of the letters before I would play the fantasy or something like that. And then I would play it, and people would say, gosh, it really made a difference to hear that letter read before you played the piece, because it put it in context. And these comments will come quite frequently. And it just began to plant a kernel of an idea that maybe there's a way to have more of the readings and more pieces, but shorter pieces, whereby you could tell a story and give a recital at the same time. I had never seen this done. I hadn't really planned to do anything like that. It just evolved. I mean, don't laugh. It evolved out of me talking too much in my concerts. So
yeah.
it sort of came out of that. And I think that, people sometimes say, yes, what will is it a lecture recital? There is nothing lecture-like about it at all. Far from it. I would say it's more like, in the way that when we were at school and we would go to music lessons and you'd see the dusty bust of the composer on a shelf, and they weren't real people. They were just people who you maybe learnt about in a music class. And I wanted to bring them to life so that you knew about their love life, their struggles, their financial struggles, their domestic struggles. But that was in the context of the music. So if you were to come, you'd hear about their love, or certainly a certain portion of their life, interspersed with pieces that they wrote, always whole pieces. I never chop pieces up. So it's complete pieces. Occasionally it's one movement, but that's very, very occasional. And then the narrator, becomes the voice of that composer. So they're not reading random letters. The letters form a story, and we both own the stage together. And certainly with my latest one of Clara, I think that both the actress and I feel we are alternately Clara. When I'm playing, I'm Clara, and when she is reading, she's Clara, and we become one person in the middle somewhere. So that's a little bit of the background.
Goodness, that is remarkable. How very interesting. I mean, it really is a collaboration. It's 50-50, isn't it, really?
It is. I mean, there tends to be a little bit more in the way of music than words, but it is a collaboration. And really, for me, it's a form of chamber music. And I think what I've really loved about it is that it's brought people to concerts that might not otherwise come to concerts. So they might come because they fancy seeing Dame Harriet Walter, for instance, because they've seen her in the theatre or on telly or whatever, and they might not be a regular concert goer, but then that's a way to get into going to concerts. And people have said that, I wouldn't normally go to a classical concert, but I enjoy doing that. So it's a good way to combine the both, I think.
That's amazing. And to date, how many are there of these composer portraits?
There are 6. There are 6 shows now. And I've probably, in that 20, I was trying to work this out this morning, but I must have done, I mean, many hundreds, probably up to nearer the 1,000, but I mean, certainly certainly 500, maybe 800. I don't. It's a lot. It's a lot. I haven't
My
counted them
goodness.
all, but
And
um,
have you exported them? Have you played overseas?
yes, I've done them in various countries overseas. Obviously, the language is the barrier. So on the whole, they're better in English speaking countries. And I feel it would be a little presumptuous to take a show about a German composer to Germany in English, for instance. But I think one of the highlights was going abroad was going to Turkey, to
Goodness.
this beautiful big hall in Istanbul with a very well-known Turkish actress. And she did the show in Turkish. Obviously, I speak absolutely no Turkish at all. And normally, I mean, you've seen some of the shows and you know that the baton is handed between me and the actress fairly seamlessly. I know where to come in and I know the kind of mood to take up from the actor. But of course, because I speak no Turkish, we had to arrange this sort of code whereby the last sentence before I would play the piece,
Yes.
she had a little table with props on it and she would raise her glass or she would run her fingers through her hair. So I had a little list on the piano. I don't have the music, but I had a little list saying runs fingers through hair or picks up pen. The trouble was occasionally she would do this unprompted, unrelated to that by mistake. And I didn't know if that was my cue or not. So I
So
think I've never
funny.
felt so exhausted at the end of a concert. She was terrific and it was amazing to do it in that space. But in Turkish was not something that I'd ever and the text was transcribed by an English professor into Turkish over there. So
That's
hopefully it was very close to the text. But yes, who
that
thought?
is remarkable. Who'd
Turkey.
have thought? Who'd have thought? Now I don't know who that actress was or actor, but you've got some amazing actors on the roster, don't you? I mean, you talked about Dame Harriet Walter, Juliet Stevenson. Oh my goodness, it goes on and on. I'm having a blank. But if you could explain actors and actresses.
Yes, of course. The great difference between music world and the drama world is that musicians, as you know, get booked up very far in advance. People are booking for 2027 now, but actors tend to get sometimes weeks, occasionally even days in advance, apart from maybe a major play, but they might have 6 months notice. So the problem I was encountering was that if a certain actor or actress would say yes, they could do that date, when it came to the date, they weren't free to do the date because suddenly they've got to run at National Theatre or they're in a film in Hollywood or something. So then
Oh
I
my.
didn't have that actor anymore. So it became apparent that you can't run on a system of understudies, but you can run on a system of a pool of actors who are all happy to stand in for one another. And there's no lead person, but whoever is available. And it's known that if that person is not available, I would go to somebody else and hopefully they would be kind enough to step in. So I didn't know any actors at all when I started, literally none, but I've always loved going to the theatre. So
Yes.
I was a bit awestruck by these actors. But yes, I
How
mean
did
you
you
mentioned.
manage? How did you manage to get them to take part in your show? I mean, you didn't know them that well. I mean, it's quite remarkable how they have enjoyed and continue to enjoy working with you in these shows.
Well, I mean, in the beginning, I literally knew no actors at all. And I wrote cold to a wonderful actor called Malcolm Sinclair, who I'd seen in a production of Alan Ayckbourn's House and Garden. And I saw in his biography that he worked a lot with the Nash Ensemble. So I knew that he liked music. And I wrote to him via Spotlight, the actor's directory, and said, I'm not some bonkers musician, but I've got a bit of an idea. What do you think? And we met for coffee and he was lovely. And he said,
Oh,
don't put any extra narration in, just use their words and get back to me when you've done it. so
that's
so
amazing.
um that was quite something. But he did narrate and has narrated a lot for me in the past. And then, if he couldn't do it, he might suggest somebody else. And if somebody else couldn't suggest, they might have suggested. But I've been very fortunate, Erica, that actually a lot of these people I work with have become real friends in my life.
It's fantastic.
So, it's more than a working relationship now. And that makes it really special because, sometimes for instance, if you're going to Scotland, we might go up the day before, so you've got a nice train journey, and then you don't come back till the day
Oh,
after. So essentially, you're hanging out with someone for 3 days, and
yes.
that's a lovely way for friendships to form. And I feel very blessed. I mean, Simon Russell Beale and I had the most extraordinary time and touring in Southern Ireland as part of Fineen Collins's wonderful festival in Galway. And it
Yeah.
rained for 5 days to the point that if you would step outside, you would feel you'd gone in the shower. And I have never laughed with what somebody so much, and they looked after us so well in Galway. The weather was, I have no words for the weather, but it's one of those memorable times that I won't forget. And of course, that those things like that are very bonding experiences.
Oh, it sounds amazing, and I know you've got so many of them are your friends now. It's fantastic. What's it like working with actors compared to working with musicians? Do they see things differently? Do they work differently? Do they have to prepare as much as a poor concert pianist who has to?
I think nobody has to prepare as much as a poor concert pianist. I mean, well, we're locked in our room for days and days and hours and weeks, and so no, I mean, if any of them were here now, nobody would say that they would spend 8 weeks on a script, but they do take it seriously, and often they'll ask really interesting questions about the script, or they might say, I don't think the sentence works here, why don't we move it?
Okay.
Or what was the context of this? So they do, for sure. I mean, nobody's just turning up and reading it. Work goes into it, and then we'll work
Yeah.
on the actual day and try to make it seamless. And then sometimes, such as in my Rachmaninoff show, Henry Goodman is another wonderful actor, as you know, I work with, who had a fantastic idea about starting with a pre-recorded telegram that had been sent to Rachmaninoff on his deathbed. And he said, I think we should pre-record it and play it through speakers at the start of the show.
Mm.
And I said, no, 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 that's going to be a nightmare because you've got to get the recording to all the venues in advance. But actually, even though it is logistically a little bit of a nightmare, it makes a huge difference because I know you've seen my Rachmaninoff show, but this is blasted out through the speakers before he even comes on the stage. And then
Yes.
he comes on very quiet, and then suddenly he's in the body of Rachmaninoff, really. You feel you're
Mm.
with Rachmaninoff on the stage. So, and similarly, Harriet with I, Clara has come up with some staging ideas. So these are not staged shows, but sometimes they come up with great ideas that I could never have thought of because I'm not an actor or a director. But
That's
you know,
fantastic.
it's interesting to learn about that.
Has it ever happened, and you, of course, you don't have to mention any names, where you've asked a certain actor to do one of your shows and it just hasn't worked?
Yes, I think sometimes you don't. It has happened a couple of occasions, not recently, but in the more distant past, where you can see it's not particularly something that they would want to do further on and didn't
Mm.
take it quite as seriously. But not to any large extent. I think, all the people I work with are, we're a close-knit little team, and so no, not anymore. Maybe a long time ago, but not these days.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, talking of the repertoire that goes into these shows, most of it, apart from maybe Debussy, but most of it is romantic. And I think your repertoire is diverse, but I notice there is a leaning towards a romantic style, especially Schumann and Brahms. Is this the music that you love?
Oh, it really is. I mean, this Schumann, Chopin, Brahms are my absolute, actually, and Rachmaninoff. You're right, they're all romantic. How could I how could I say otherwise? It's always, since I was a child, that was the music that just drew me in, spoke to me. And how can you not love these composers? And we all play that game, don't we? If you were on a desert island and you can only take one composer, who would it be?
Well, I'm going to ask you that later. I'm going to ask you that later. So hold tight there. No, I know you mentioned these great composers. What about Clara Schumann? I believe you were the first to record both the Clara and Robert Schumann concertos onto one album.
Yes, in the mid 90s, in 1996, it was the 100th anniversary of her death. And obviously, for people listening, Clara Schumann is incredibly popular today.
Mm.
But in the 90s, almost nobody played her music. And the interest was just not there. But I always loved it. And I thought it had such a unique voice. I mean, you obviously are not in the same league as Robert's music, but it's beautiful music. It's incredible that she wrote what she did
Mm.
under the circumstances that she lived in and having really very little chance to study composition. Um, and of course, she was the most extraordinary pianist that we have known, apart from Liszt. So the fact that she composed as well is really extraordinary. And in the 90s, nobody was playing her music. So I did do a concert at the Wigmore Hall to commemorate her 100th anniversary, which was a combination of both of their pieces, and with a big major work of Schumann in each half as well. I played at Carnival and also Kreisleriana, and a lot of her shorter pieces. And then that year also I recorded the piano concerto of Robert and the piano concerto of Clara, and her beautiful Concertsatz, which is she didn't finish but was finished by a wonderful Dutch musicologist. And so I recorded that, and I believe at the time that was the first coupling. I may be wrong, but that was the first coupling. And certainly in this country, people were not. It was always Grieg and Schumann. You remember you'd have those. The Schumann went with the Grieg, not with the Clara. So, and both in A
Yes.
minor. So
Interesting.
it's 30 odd years ago now.
It's remarkable. Well, I mean, I can tell performing, of course, is a big part of your life. But you obviously, teaching is important too. You're a professor at the Guildhall. And of course, you're a regular writer for our advanced How to Play column inside Pianist. I mean, teaching is an important part of your musical life.
I think for me, it's a really important part, and I've learned so much through teaching, because then when you're practicing, you think, oh, am I doing what I'm saying? How would I explain this to somebody else? And also things that you take for granted that aren't too difficult to do, somebody else may find challenging. And you have to work out how you do that. And conversely, the other way,
Mm.
sometimes I have students who can play things with such ease that I couldn't believe it. It would take me, days and days and days to be able, weeks and weeks. So it teaches you a lot about yourself and about other people, because we've all got different personalities, and it's a very good thing to do for a musician. I think one needs a lot of patience, but I get so much back from that. I feel it's a great privilege for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I mean, you yourself had a great teacher in Joan Havel.
I did, she was an extraordinary teacher, and I always say to this day that I don't think I'd be playing the piano now had I not met her. I was a 16-year-old who uh, really needed a lot of technical help and support, and she was the first person who really believed in me and said, you could do this. And we worked very well together because she gave 100% and I gave 100%. And that in a teacher student relationship is always I wanted to learn. I was hungry to learn
Yes.
and to be helped. And I absolutely owe so much to her.
Wow. And she was the teacher behind you when you won the 1984 piano category of young musician?
I'd only just gone to her actually. And funnily enough, there's a tiny little story attached to this, that my first lesson with her was the morning after the previous competition, and I'd heard it on the television, and I'd been eliminated from that competition, I think, in the first or second round. And I'd gone to her house and I said, oh, it was wonderful. And she said, well, if you work hard, you could win that next time. And I thought, you're mad. Who obviously I could never win it. And she said, yeah, we'll work really hard and you could win it. And it really made me think a lot about the power of positive thought with teaching, and really encouraging somebody. Of course, nobody knew if you could win or not win, but the belief that you could was enough to fire you up and keep you going.
Yes, you could say that, but obviously she did have faith in you. She could see something there, you know.
Well, one would one, one, one would hope so.
Well, she was right, wasn't she? And that really did launch your career, and one could say, right?
I think, do you know what? I mean, back in the day in the 80s, it's not that it's not a huge competition now because it is, but I think the fact that we only had 4 or 5 channels, so and the final was live on BBC Two,
Yes.
and I'd only played about 3 concertos in my life with the local youth orchestra. So can you imagine the pressure to play live on the television with BBC Philharmonic? I mean,
Unbelievable.
it was massive. I was only 17 or 18. So, but the coverage, I remember going to do my driving test a couple of days later in Guildford, and you have to do reversing round a corner. And I clipped the corner. And the driving instructor said to me, "Oh, you clipped the corner." He said, "But I think you've been very busy this weekend playing the piano.
Oh my
So why
goodness.
don't we have another go?" So he sort of, it was just it's
Isn't
such a
that
nice thing to
amazing?
do.
A
Yes. So
driving
even the driving
instructor.
instructor had seen it on the telly.
Oh,
Yes.
goodness. That's
Oh, the
remarkable.
examiner, not instructor, examiner. Oh, it
Amazing.
was the actual test.
How
So
fantastic.
yes, funny little things like that. But it's
Oh,
a long
wow.
time ago now.
Yeah. Well, talking of TV, I'm now going to turn to radio. And you enjoy presenting on both Radio 3 and Radio 4 as well, don't you?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed doing the radio. I've always loved radio since I was a kid. I used to sort of burrow down my bed with the radio in a single earphone when I was about 8. So as a medium, it's always something I've loved, probably more than
Mm.
television actually, and would choose it as a medium. But it's been a great privilege to do programs, and sometimes I do some record review or building a library, various programs like that on Radio 3, and I've made some features for Radio 4.
Mm.
And it's a joy to go and chat to people and explore other things about music. And, the microphone is your friend, and it's
Mm.
very different from television. And there's an intimacy about it that I think is very appealing to me. So I've enjoyed doing it and
Mm.
feel grateful for all those opportunities
Mm.
to do that because it engages my brain in another way, which is a good idea.
Well, absolutely. And I really enjoy listening to some of your building a libraries on Radio 3. And I mean, I know sometimes you're given something like Rack 3 or the Schumann Concerto. Surely it must take so much preparation for these programs when you've got so many recordings to compare.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge task because actually, and I think what a lot of people don't realize when they listen, and for very good reason, because why would you? But you can only have 8 or 9 recordings in your final pick, so you're always going to leave out somebody's favorite. It's impossible with those pieces you've just mentioned. There are so many standard, benchmark, and wonderful recordings, so it's just a little snapshot. And sometimes I like to include pieces, interpretations that aren't so well known to open the door to somebody
Yes.
else who I've enjoyed very much, but maybe isn't one of the most famous pianists in the world. That's nice to be able to do that. And actually, on the 27th of this month, I'm going to be doing Chrysleriana for Building a Library, which is a piece very close to my own heart. And ironically, I've actually recorded it myself, although obviously that will not be in the program. But it's a lot of work, as you say, and a lot of study, and it gives me a lot to think about. I think it's a very interesting job to do.
How wonderful. So that's the 27th of
That's the
December.
27th on radio, the afternoon of Saturday, the 27th, record review. It's Building a Library.
Fantastic. Oh, exciting. I'll be listening. Okay, right. We're now going to ask you a few questions. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we're going to go back to that one desert island question. So these are some light-hearted questions that I'd like to pose to you. First one being, if you could play only one composer from now on, who would it be?
For me, that's quite easy, actually, that Brahms.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Because, I mean, Schumann coming in a very, very close second with Chopin, but there's something about Brahms that just touches my soul so much that I couldn't live without his music, even though it's a relatively small output compared with, Beethoven some of the other composers, but that is the music, and and I include in that all the symphonies and the double concerto and all of it. That would be, if I could only take one away, it would be his complete work, songs, everything.
Fantastic. Okay, next question. One pianist, dead or alive, you travel long and far to hear.
Oh, that's a very, very difficult question. Dead or alive? My goodness. I mean, probably Horowitz,
Oh,
I
okay.
would say. But, I quite like to have heard Clara Schumann.
I figured
So
you'd say that. Have you heard Horowitz? Have you heard Horowitz live?
never heard him live. No, I have many of his recordings, of course. And there are so many wonderful pianists in the world. That's a difficult
Of
one to
course.
answer.
Of course. One person, dead or alive, you would like to play for.
Oh, well, I think I'd have to say Clara to that one, wouldn't I? I mean, I think she could give me a few tips on playing her music.
What about Robert as well? Maybe the two of them together.
Maybe the two of them. Maybe we could have a private soiree.
Okay. Next question. Do you have any technical struggles at the piano?
Oh, loads. Absolutely. I think there are so many. Every piece is full of technical struggles, even what one doesn't think of as technique. To play a beautiful cantabile piece with the most amazing sound and legato and projection. This is also technique, but it's not just about running around in double thirds. But running around in double thirds is also quite tricky. So yes, it's all tricky, but that's why we do it. There are obviously pieces that I am not going to play because there are people who can play them much better. So now that I'm older, I like to think more about the pieces that really suit me and leave the other rep, much as I love it, to people who can really knock it out of the park.
It's a very, very clever idea. Absolutely. What would be your advice to an amateur pianist about how to improve?
Oh, well, I think, funnily enough, I've taught a lot of amateur pianists over the years, and I would say it's consistency. Um, it's about you may know that I'm a bit of a gym bunny as well, and it's a similar kind of thing. It's little and often, and it's not that crash 2 hour practice the day before your lesson. It's
Yes.
getting to the piano every day, even if it's for 15 minutes. Um, it's always better to do a little bit well than to try and do a lot roughly and take it. So I often say to my students, it's like having a set of Lego and you've got to build a house out of it. You have to start with that first bit of Lego to start to build the foundations. So a little bit every day would be my
Oh,
advice.
goodness. Do you go to the gym every day?
I go to the gym at least 4 times a week. Yeah.
My goodness. And does that help you relax a bit away from the
That's
piano?
not very relaxing.
That's true.
This is not relevant to our uh, webinar, but I was diagnosed with osteoporosis and they wanted to have all kinds of things to help me with that. But then somebody said, oh, you can go and lift weights and it helps. And I got a bit addicted. So something else took me there. And now I really enjoy going. And I think it's very good for the
Fantastic.
for the mind. And I'm with all these, men with big muscles. And it's a different part of my life.
That is fantastic. I get it. I get it. If you weren't a pianist, what would you be?
Uh, don't laugh. I always wanted to be a detective.
I'm trying not to laugh. Great. Why?
No, I really kind of fancied. I've often thought about, joining the police, becoming a detective. I don't know. It was always, I probably read too many crime novels, but yeah, I would have, I think, enjoyed that. I don't know whether I would have, but it's something I thought about when I was younger. So the moment has
Interesting.
passed now.
That's so interesting. I think it would be a very, very interesting career, actually.
Yes,
Hmm,
something a bit left field.
wonderful. Okay, last question. One composer you're not quite ready to tackle.
That's a very good question because one of my favorite composers, for obvious reasons, is Bach. I couldn't live without his music, and yet I don't think I've ever programmed his music in a recital,
Wow.
even though I have played quite a lot of it, but I don't feel comfortable playing his music on stage. And that's just because of the way it
Mm.
suits me, suits my hands. But I love it with a passion and will listen a lot, not obviously just to the keyboard, but all his outputs. So I would have to say Bach is, if one's talking about standard
Yes.
rep and not slightly left field.
That's so interesting. What about then Mozart Scarlatti? Do you feel the same a bit there?
No, not really, because I've played a lot of those. I've played lots of Mozart concerti over the years
Okay.
and many Scarlatti sonatas and things. So, yeah, Bach is very, very difficult for pianists, I think. And
I think
there
so.
are so many wonderful Bach experts
Yeah.
that I feel that's their territory, and I would not impose upon that because I
Yeah.
wouldn't do it as well.
It's so vast that it's almost a whole career in itself, isn't it,
You're
Bach?
right,
Ugh.
it is. And I think if we think of the great Bach specialists in our world, most of them do focus on that area very strongly. It's not all they play, but they're very well. If you think of people like Schiff and Angela Hewitt, these are people who you know for playing Bach.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Lucy, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast, and we've come to the end. What can I say? What are you up to? What are you up to this week? Busy week ahead?
Busy week ahead. I run a series called Shackleford Concerts in Surrey, and we always have a Christmas concert, which is a lot of fun. We have narrators and Christmas music, and I'm playing some duets with wonderful pianist Richard Sisson. So I am busy doing things for that to get that concert off the ground, and it's festive fun.
Oh, how lovely. And when is that concert?
That's on the 18th of December in Surrey. It's sort of near the Guildford area.
Okay.
If anyone wanted to come, it's on the website. It's called Shackleford Concerts, and it's a mixture of readings and music. And we have Susan Bullock singing, and Lisa Friend playing the flute, and Joanna David and Freddie Fox narrating. So we've got a lovely Tom
Fantastic.
Elwyn singing. It's going to be a fantastic lineup. And we have a lot of fun. We do a matinee and an evening, and a lot of laughter is had, as you can imagine.
How fantastic. Okay. Well, hope all goes well in the rehearsals next week.
Thank you. And I hope you have a lovely Christmas. You're doing such a brilliant job with the magazine. We're very lucky to have you and the magazine.
Oh, thank you so much, Lucy. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. Bye bye. That was Liszt's Un Sospiro, and it was performed by Lucy Parham. Pianist podcasts are free, and a really good way to support what we do is by subscribing to Pianist. Visit our website at pianistmagazine.com and listen to us on YouTube by searching Pianist Magazine. And don't forget to sign up to our newsletter, which is full of extra playing tips and useful information. Go to pianistmagazine.com to find out how to sign up.